Just real quick,
Yes.
for the new folks, maybe they could share their affiliation or what the connection is as well. That'd just be helpful since I know I don't know everyone that's new.
Be great. Brian, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll back up. I'm a partner with the law firm Haynes Boone. My office is in Tysons, Virginia. I'm a member of the nuclear practice group within that law firm, and some of my clients are very active in the design and construction space.
Calvin, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Calvin Lowe. I'm a physics professor at Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. I am happy to be here. I've been at Hampton for a few years. This is actually my third time working at Hampton, so I've been a few other places in between. My research interest is in the other nuclear energy and nuclear fusion. We're building actually a fusion experiment here at Hampton, which we hope to get off the ground in the next couple of years.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. And finally, Mary, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Newmeyer. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Urenco USA. Urenco is a provider of enrichment services for the nuclear industry. We operate the nation's only commercial scale enrichment plant that's in southeastern New Mexico, but we have offices and are a number of us are based here in Virginia, in Roslyn. So very much look forward to participating and very happy to be joining the board.
Great. Thank you, Mary. So I'll ask the other authority members as we talk today and engage, if you will introduce where you're coming from. I think for our new members, that would be probably helpful. I'm Tom DePonte. I'm the chair of the authority and director of government affairs for Framatome, which is headquartered in Lynchburg, Virginia. So we will get to the rest of our program in a little bit, but first I wanted to welcome Lucas Brunn from E4 Carolina. Sorry, Ryan, did you have something before we start? Your hand up.
Can everyone just mute if they're not presently talking so we can avoid some of the feedback?
That's always helpful.
Thank you all.
So we invited Lucas, who is with E4 Carolinas, and I'll go through his full bio, but he's also been actively engaged with the economic development study for Southeast Nuclear, which included Virginia, and there's some really interesting data that he was able to share. But Lucas is the managing director of research and economic development at E4 Carolinas. Those of you who may not be familiar with E4, it is a energy-focused organization for North Carolina, South Carolina, based in Charlotte. He has been an adjunct professor at Duke University, working specifically on some of the supply chain and value chain analysis for the Center on International Development. He's widely published, has had a long career at Duke, and led a lot of economic development research for the government or for governments, foundations, and international development organizations, and has recently, like you said, joined E4 Carolinas and helped with this economic development study. So I'm gonna stop there and turn it over. Welcome, Lucas. I think he had some slides he wants to share. We will share these at the end. And for authority members, if you have questions as we go, please just hit the raise hand button so we can call on you and go from there. So Lucas, let me make sure we've still got you here.
Thank you. I can hear you. And let me just
okay.
begin to share my screen and let's begin the presentation. Let's see. Can everyone see that? Can I just get a thumbs up?
Yep,
okay.
We're good.
Great. So Tom, thank you so much for inviting me to speak to the authority today about What we've discovered about the economic impact of the nuclear industry in the Southeast United States, and also just to note, Virginia is included in this study. So I'll be breaking out not only the Southeast United States numbers, but also the Virginia numbers. And I hope if we could just the questions, I know there's lots of questions coming up. If I could just ask y'all to hold those off until the end of the presentation, and then we'll just take them all at once. Tom did a great job of introducing me. I'm Global Value Chain Specialist. I'm currently the Director of Research at E4 Carolinas, previously at Duke University for about a dozen years, both as faculty and staff. You'll see my credentials there at the bottom. Tom did a great job of introducing E4 Carolinas. We're a trade association of energy companies and organizations based in Charlotte, North Carolina. We were founded in 2009 as the Carolinas Nuclear Cluster. So we've got a long tradition and history and membership base in the nuclear industry. The organization really is focused on kind of an all of the above energy solution geared towards economic growth, efficient use of resources, and care for our environment. We have over 100 members, including companies, university, and nonprofits. And I'll just make a quick plug. It's a really nice organization because it allows conversations across sectors about energy and different perspectives. And it really is a nice format, a nice table to have those conversations in our region. In 2021, we received a 3-year grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to conduct research and planning activity around deploying nuclear technologies in the Southeast United States. And we organized the Southeast Nuclear Advisory Council as part of that effort. And we hope to continue that Southeast Nuclear Council after the end of the grant that is scheduled currently for May of 2024. We put out a report, I guess, on the 20th to talk about what we've discovered about the economic impact of the nuclear industry in the region. Just real quickly, it goes into 2 parts. The first part is kind of a market overview to orient people about, the footprint of the nuclear industry in the Southeast, and the second part does the more formal economic impact study. I'll note that the people that helped me with this study, Joey Von Nessen at University of South Carolina did the economic impact analysis, and I was ably assisted by Todd Royal at E4 Carolinas, who did a lot of the legwork in terms of identifying the companies in each state, which we'll talk about. So just an industry overview. For most of y'all, this will be very familiar to you, but I'm always amazed by the lack of information about what the nuclear presence is in the Southeast. So 25 nuclear reactors out of the 23 total, 13 of 55 total operating plants in the United States. Virginia, of course, is 4 reactors at 2 plants at North Anna and Surrey. Nuclear power makes up 37% of electric power generation capacity in the Southeast compared to 19% in the US. So the Southeast has more nuclear electric power generation capacity than the US overall by quite a bit. In Virginia, the data 2022 show that 31% of net electric power generation capacity is from nuclear sources in Virginia. I like to present this slide because I think it provides a good context for why we're talking about nuclear. So, the age of reactors, every year it gets a little bit older. And I think it's important to note that while nuclear reactors are licensed for 40 years, they have a lifespan of much longer than that. And even though the majority of operating reactors were built in the 70s and 80s, only 2 reactors, Watts Bar and Vogtle, entered into service this century. We hope to have an additional reactor soon entering into service in Vogtle, 4, but the point is that the reactors are aging, and that in order for it to be part of the clean energy solution, new reactor construction has to exceed reactor decommissioning. to help achieve the zero carbon energy goals that everyone is trying to achieve. So the next part of the study went into the Southeast nuclear companies, and I want to talk briefly about how we did that analysis. The first part of it was we created a value chain. My background is in value chain analysis, so I wanted to better understand what the industry looks like. So you have everything from inputs to post-sale services and end-of-life activities, production support services where you have the EPCs and supporting services, and then the institutions and supporting organizations that are part of that industrial ecosystem. Most people, again, I think the current audience not included, when they think about nuclear, think about the utilities, and they may think about some of the components and subsystems providers, maybe some of the technology vendors as being the nuclear industry. The point here is that it's a broad industry, and it includes a number of actors all along the value chain that are providing product support services that are important in order for this industry to function. We created a Southeast Nuclear Business Directory, and the purpose there was really to identify firms active in the nuclear industry with a presence in the Southeast United States. We looked globally. We identified who the global lead firms are, and then identified, what do they do, where are they located, and then we went from a bottom up. So instead of just top down global, we went also bottom up and identified companies that we may have missed as a result of that global perspective, and wanted to search additional companies and identify them through industry news sources, Reference USA, LinkedIn, other organizations that have inventories of their nuclear capacity and companies in the region. Tennessee and Virginia being one of those states that have that inventory available. What we did is we identified 494 firms active in the nuclear industry with locations in the Southeast. And those 494 firms had 1,600 approximately unique locations. So not all of those unique locations are going to be doing nuclear related activities, but the point is that they have a broad footprint in the industry and in the region. In Virginia, we identified 174 companies with 352 branch locations or unique locations of those companies. We positioned those along the nuclear value chain based on their specific product or service, and then we visualize the database in two ways. The first way is we just kind of, put the number of companies that we identified and superimpose that on the value chain that you previously saw. These are the results for the entire Southeast United States. And then we also did kind of dots on the map. And this is kind of the cluster map for nuclear organizations in the Southeast United States. You'll see Virginia is well represented there. So the second part of the study really did the formal economic impact assessment of the Southeast nuclear industry. We modeled it in three different ways. The first is, what is the total impact of current nuclear power operations at nuclear power plants within the Southeast region? The second activity is, what are the firms that are supporting the nuclear industry as suppliers for nuclear power plants and other nuclear related activities located outside of the Southeast region? So for example, imagine a company has products and services. They are both supplying and providing services for existing operational nuclear power plants that are located in the Southeast, but also for products and services located outside of the Southeast. Well, we wanted to capture both of those activities. And then finally, what's the total impact of non-Department of Defense federal facilities engaged in nuclear-related R&D, waste remediation, and other related activities? The way that we modeled this is most people who have done economic impact analyses or read them realize that it's kind of you're trying to measure what the effect is of the equivalent of dropping a rock into a still pond, right? The direct effect is the rock. The indirect effect is that first wave coming out from the rock, and then the induced is the second wave. There are additional ripples that occur as a result of that economic impact, that direct economic impact. But the modeling approach that we use, which is a software model called IMPLAN, stops at that second order effect, the third induced impact. The sum of direct, indirect, and induced is the total effect, the total economic impact. So in terms of each of the activities, the direct employment in nuclear electric power generation was quantified for each state based on the Bureau of Labor Statistics quarterly census of employment and wages. For Virginia, that number is 1860. We also identified employment that is serving non-Southeast located nuclear industry and nuclear power plants. For the state, that direct employment count is 8183. And then for the non-DoD federal facilities, the JLab, 766 employees. So we use those for each activity and summed them up, and then got a total impact figure. The direct employment of about 55,000, supply chain and indirect effects for the Southeast United States of 98,000 employees for 153 total economic employment related to the nuclear industry in the Southeast United States. For the Southeast economic output results, a total direct impact of 21.3, supply chain and indirect impact of 21.6, and a total of about $43 billion. State and local taxes contribution on an annual basis of 3.7 billion and an average wage of about 90,000. Here are the results for Virginia that we have in the report. A direct impact of approximately 4 billion, supply chain and indirect of 3.1 for a total of 7.1 billion. Annual contribution to state and local taxes of 842 million and an average wage of $100,000. We also wanted to better understand if nuclear power plants are going to be built in the future, what can we expect in terms of economic impact, both on the construction side and on the operations side? And so the way that we modeled it was, what would an investment of $1 billion yield in terms of total economic impact? What would a total investment of $1 billion of operations yield in terms of total economic impact? We did that for each state. And the bottom line there is that it doesn't change much, whether you look at the regional level or at the state level. But in the report, we do break it out for each state and refine the results that I'm presenting here. For nuclear power plant construction, $1 billion worth of investment yields approximately $2 billion of total impact. So for every dollar you put in, you get $2 out. For operations, it's the same thing. So for $1 billion in, you get about another $1 billion out. So a 2-to-1 return. The difference here is the average wage. The average wage, this is in 2021 dollars, $65,000 for construction wages versus operations wages of over 105,000. So you have fewer people earning more dollars, but resulting in the same, general economic impact if you invest in construction versus operations. So the bottom line that I wanted to leave you all away with, today, which is that the economic impact of the nuclear industry in the 5-state region is about $43 billion. Level of activity supports about 153,000 jobs and $14 billion in labor income that would not exist otherwise. Contributes about $4 billion in state taxes across the region. The multiplier for the industry is quite high. For every 10 jobs created in the nuclear industry, another 18 jobs are created as a result of the indirect and induced effects. And then finally, in terms of operations versus construction, for 100 in revenue generated from nuclear power plants in the 5-state region, approximately $200 in total economic impact would be created, representing a 2-to-1 ratio. The bottom line here is that the nuclear industry supports high job quantity and high job quantity and quality. That's it in terms of the presentation. Happy to answer any questions or make any clarifications that are necessary. Thank you so much again for inviting me.
Thank you, Lucas. That was great. It's really some interesting data. I know I've had a chance to actually look at the report. I know we'll send, I think we already sent a link out to it, but if not, we will get that out to the whole team. It's got some really good data. I guess I'm going to take the privilege of the chair and ask the first question, but please, everybody, raise your hand if you've got a question. But I guess my first question is, what kind of reaction has there been? And I guess I know I had the privilege of hearing some of the data already at the Virginia, Canada event, but kind of has this been out on the road? Have you been sharing this with different policymakers and stakeholders in the region, and how's their reaction been to it thus far?
Thank you. I had the privilege of talking about this at the Virginia Canada Summit, just kind of the highlights, and also presented the results at the North Carolina Energy Policy Council that met last week. Also had a number of news articles that came as a result of the press releases. The reaction has been very positive. I think that there's a real hunger and a real demand for speaking about the economics of the nuclear industry, and that it's not just, how much it costs to put a nuclear power plant into place, but also what the benefit is in terms of jobs and high quality wages in the region. It's been overwhelmingly supportive. The questions that I've gotten are, we need more information about the economics of the nuclear industry. We're really hungry for understanding how nuclear stacks up to other power generation sources. I'll say that from the North Carolina standpoint, there seems to be a lot of confusion about where the nuclear industry sits relative to other energy sources, and providing that information to policymakers in a one-page handout, by the way, that we have at the southeastnuclear.org website that you can look at, identify some of the companies. We've only been able to provide some examples of the companies in that handout, but also the dots on the map are really helpful to understand that it's companies in their communities that are related to this nuclear industry, and hopefully the new construction that will soon begin in the near future. So overall, very, very supportive. And the only questions that I've gotten that are challenging are, what are y'all going to do? It's great to hear about all this economic impact, but what are y'all going to do about addressing the nuclear construction costs? And that seems to be on the mind of a lot of folks. Is we believe in nuclear, we believe in the fact that it's supporting clean energy goals, but how do you get them in the ground at a reasonable cost?
Yep, That's fair. So just one more follow-up. You mentioned kind of the thirst for the data. Is there any plans for any follow-up study related to this? I know this was done, I believe, largely through the Department of Commerce grant that you all received, but are there any plans for follow-up work?
We'd like to. I think when I talked to Joey Von Nessen at University of South Carolina, what he's eager to get his hands on are the economics of SMRs and be able to model those. There's other folks at University of Texas and University of Alaska that are doing, trying to get their hand around the economic impact assessment of an SMR. I think, we need, currently the information that we presented is based on the input-output matrix for existing nuclear power plants. And there's some limitations to that, particularly on the operations side. And we just need to have a little bit, a lag in time in order for that data to get updated in order for us to be able to do that modeling exercise. There's also a real demand, Tom, for public opinion polling at a local or a regional level that policymakers are asking about relative nuclear versus other energy sources. I would love to get my hands on and do some of that work at the state or regional level to be able to provide to policymakers. There's a lot of organizations that do it at a national level, but less, to my knowledge, there's no one that does it at a state level or even at a regional level. And so one of the activities that I would love to be able to do if the advisory council continues on is to get our hands around the public opinion so that we can feed that to policymakers. Because again, there seems to be a lot of confusion about both the popularity of nuclear versus other sources and the cost and the economics of them.
Great. Well, let me, Andrew Hutton with Jefferson Labs has a question. Andrew?
Yeah. So yes, Ryan did distribute the report and I read it. It's impressive. I just feel that I ought to comment that I'm at Jefferson Lab. We have an electron accelerator, 12JEV, which we use for fundamental nuclear physics studies, which unfortunately is not related at all to nuclear energy. I would love to think that we were involved in waste remediation, but we are not yet. So I feel I ought to say that.
Thank you, Andrew. And that information came to light during our research. We wanted to include you because we didn't just look at nuclear power production. We looked at the entire value chain of the nuclear industry, including radioisotopes used for multiple purposes. And we also wanted to include folks in fundamental research like yourself, because we also included universities that were doing nuclear related research. So we included you. Hopefully that provides some benefit to Virginia.
Thanks. Scott Coppo with BWXT.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I was curious. So I'm glad that you looked at all the totality, or as much as you could, of nuclear. But I'm curious, when you went through that, if you sort of lumped everything together in terms of whatever the economic analysis you did, or if you broke it out. And I say that because I'm not sure that everything belongs together as we push. I think most people here, want to see nuclear be successful, but it falls into different buckets or different areas. So even from electrons on the grid to, say, process heat, the modeling might not quite line up with a one-for-one with one another. And it might actually be two different sets of economic models from a scaling standpoint. And then how do you get your price points to where they need to be? So hopefully that makes some sense. It's kind of common, but there was a question somewhere in there. I'm really just curious, but again, appreciate the work that you've done and love to see what comes next.
Thanks, Scott. Again, it was a broad assessment of the nuclear industry, regardless of what end market you're serving. We again included a number, including commercial and industrial heat and power. We included centralized utilities. We included space activities. So we hope that it's encompassing of multiple end markets, and BWXT would be included in that.
I guess the follow-up is, was everything, I guess, pulled together, or did you do it in chunks? I guess that's really the question. And I'm getting to the economics of it all.
Yeah.
You got some apples and oranges in here, and maybe some other fruits too.
Yeah. It's a great point, Scott. And I was asked about this at the Virginia Canada Summit also of, what's the economic impact of the nuclear medicine industry? What's the economic impact of different portions of the nuclear industry? We didn't model it that way. We put everything into the same bucket. We could, right? We'd have to redo the analysis, separate out what the direct impact is of that particular segment of the nuclear industry, whether it's the space industry, whether it's centralized utility, whether it's commercial, industrial, and power. We could do it. We just have to redo the analysis.
It's a fair answer. Thanks.
Calvin, do you have a question?
Yes. One of the questions I have, if you look at the kind of fusion, the other nuclear potential energy out here, the private sector investment in nuclear fusion industry exceeds $5-6 billion now. Just from the private sector, people betting on the outcomes. And one of the things that we're concerned about is sort of association with the fission industry because of the PR issue. So versus anytime you say that you want to do fusion, first you have to explain that it's not fission and it doesn't produce long-term radioactive stuff and all that kind of stuff. So as you look at the need for kind of public opinion polling, will you guys try to tease out kind of the understanding? I mean, how deep is the understanding of the general public in terms of the ins and outs of what nuclear energy is?
Yeah, Calvin, I don't think the general public knows the difference between fission and fusion. If you describe it as splitting a nuclear atom versus the sun, that might resonate with folks. I think it's a great idea. Love to have a conversation with you about how we can get it done.
Great, thanks. Brian, do you have a question?
Yes, thanks. I enjoyed looking over your report and the presentation. Thank you for that. You've obviously looked at a range of facilities and technologies across this region. And you said some of the feedback that you've gotten were questions about how to bring the cost of bringing new facilities online, into a commercially reasonable range. And I guess I'm curious, how do you respond to that question? Do you say, well, we've got so many competing technologies, so many types of different options that different stakeholders are pursuing, from where you sit in the analysis that you've done, is one more likely than the other to, in the near term, be capable of achieving that sort of commercial practicability?
Brian, thanks for the question. My My goal to date has been just to talk about the economic impacts and the study that we've done. I think there needs to be legislative outreach about the benefits of nuclear and comparing them to other sources of energy production. We have not at E4 Carolinas undertaken that as one of our mandates. And I just have to think about, what that would mean for E4 or the Southeast Nuclear Council to undertake an activity like that. There are other organizations at the national level that have tried and worked that have more capacity to interface with the general assemblies and the legislatures of the different states and provide them with that information. There does seem to be a real hunger for it. But in order to answer your questions directly I have focused as much of my time as possible on the report and what the report message is, rather than get into the larger issues of, does levelized cost of energy really accomplish the goal that we want to, talk about and our talking points as an industry in the nuclear world. So that might not be a satisfactory answer. It's something that we could continue to talk about how we do that effectively at each state level and as a region in order to interface with our policymakers to get them that information. But again, my time to date has been just focused on the report and what the report says about nuclear power generation and other nuclear related activities in the Southeast.
Great, thank you.
Mary, question?
Yes, I echo the others in saying this is a really great report. I really enjoyed reading it ahead of this. And I was wondering if you could talk, and I think this might be a little bit related to just the previous question, but talk a little bit more about, you talked about the indirect benefits and economic benefits and employment benefits being quite high for investment. But could you talk a little bit about how you approach that and whether there are aspects of the nuclear sector that make those benefits higher than maybe for other types of energy generation, and maybe what's unique? Yeah.
Well, what's unique is the extraordinary level of skill that's required in the nuclear industry. It's a high skill, and as a result, a high wage industry. And whenever you encounter an industry like that, you're going to get economic impacts that are much greater than other industries. I'd have to look at a schedule of different industries and see kind of where nuclear fits related to others, but I would be surprised if it wasn't among the very highest industry if you looked at them, from, coal mining all the way to, everything else that you could think of, including, space launches. I think it is among the very highest of industries in terms of economic impact.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, well, Lucas, thank you so much for joining us. I know I've already used some of the information in communication and advocacy with some of the legislators. I really appreciate it. I think we'll probably be reaching back out to you. And if there's ways that whether it's the authority or other parts of the nuclear industry in Virginia can further be helpful, please don't hesitate to reach out. We very much appreciate the work. I think it's really helpful. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Have a good morning.
You too. Okay, so moving to the rest of our agenda, I'm going to kind of group the legislative update and the VNEC briefing kind of together, because I know April will be talking a little bit about what's been going on in the legislature. But before we get to that, Glenn, if there was anything from the Virginia Energy perspective that you wanted to share. I know you've been engaged in a number of different fronts. I did want to give you a minute if there are any updates you wanted to provide to the authority. We can have them here, or we can move on to April. But I didn't want to move too quickly past that without giving you an opportunity.
Sure, no, I appreciate it. No, obviously a lot of really good discussions that are still ongoing for opportunities with the governor's moonshot. April's been doing a lot of yeoman's work during session, meeting with people. She'll give the update on legislation. The one thing I do want to add, which may be kind of interesting, is there's a green bank bill. I use green bank term loosely. It's going to be a clean energy innovation bank that is going to be able to leverage hundreds of millions of dollars of US DOE funds for Virginia and can be used for the nuclear side as well. So that bill is out of the House, out of the Senate at this point. Well, through appropriations, so close enough. And hopefully that will open up some additional funds for risk mitigation. But no, just a lot of good conversations. Appreciate what everyone's doing.
Great, thanks, Glenn. It may be interesting at our next meeting then, if that bill moves forward, to kind of have a little bit, maybe we could put that on the agenda as an item to kind of understand better as an authority how that might work and how it could be utilized. So appreciate that. April, why don't we turn over to you for the VNEC update?
Thanks, Tom. So I'll just go right into the legislature. VNEC did not have any legislation this year. We had about 30% new members, so we felt that it was a good time to take a step back and really go in and meet with all the freshman representatives and educate them on who VNEC is, the legislation that created us. We had a lot of positive feedback, and we are going to be working on some further education with legislators later on this year. So I hope to tell you about that more in the next meeting. So that will be going on. There were two bills that we did support. House Bill 1491 and Senate Bill 454. They're both cost recovery bills. House Bill 1491 is a cost recovery bill focusing on Appalachian power, and so APCO power. And that bill has passed the House and the Senate. Now, Senate Bill 454 is leading a little bit more windier road, and it's in the House today. Hopefully it's going to be voted on. It did make some changes in committee. I am not sure what that's going to look like today, but hopefully it passes. It did pass the Senate, but we'll see how that comes through today. I want to thank the VCU students that came up. They were great to come and speak with the freshman legislators. You know, it makes a difference when I have people coming up and talking not only about what the industry has done and who we are, but also talking about the future of the industry. They make a huge impact, and they're always well received. Any questions on the legislature? As Tom mentioned and Lucas mentioned, we had an event earlier in February at the Canadian Embassy. This was a partnership between VNEC and the Embassy of Canada. The state of Virginia helped us put this together, make this connection. It was a great opportunity for industry from Canada and from Virginia to get together. There's a lot of commonalities with business, and we discussed deployment, development, workforce opportunities, economic impact, supply chain issues, permitting, and environmental issues. It was a great conversation. Really enjoyed having that relationship with the Canadian Embassy. We hope to have a white paper out from that in the next few weeks, but it was just a great event to get everybody together, and it was well attended. I think we had over 60 people attend, so it was a good event.
Yeah, April, I just want to say that thank you and the state of, the Commonwealth for organizing that. It was a really good event. There was a good collection of university participation and then industry from both Virginia and Canada. So it was a great conversation.
It was, and I think one thing I think I can walk away from, and going in, I knew it, but it was good to hear it again. We're in similar situations. They are, I think Bruce Power said it best. We're moving slow to move fast, and I think we just a lot of good commonalities, and I think there was a lot of people were able to make some good connections out of the meeting. And I think that's been very helpful for some projects going forward. I got asked to be by Lucas Braun. I helped them with the Virginia outreach on the economic impact study. I was very pleased at how that's gone and the information for Virginia. I also had reached out to Virginia Economic Development Partnership to make sure that they reviewed it before it went out. They had some additions to make from their value proposition that they had put together. So I think it was a very strong document that we have. I was also able to supply that to legislators, and that was a really good thing to have during this session. And then Lucas he had asked me to be on the Southeast Nuclear Council, so I sat in my first meeting on that. I think that was at the end of January. So I've been really grateful to make that relationship with them. Then Hub is moving forward. We are right now in the process of looking for an executive director. So hopefully at the next meeting in the second quarter, we'll be able to introduce you to that person. And we will be able to go over a few of the projects that we're going to be focusing on this year. Starting out, we are still, working with the state to get the funding. But once we have that executive director in place, that we should be able to be moving forward. But we do have our 501c3 application in, so everything is checking off. We have a board that's up and running. So it's things are starting to move ahead and on the time frame that we set for 2024. This year's a big year for VNEC. Believe it or not, we need to update the strategic plan. So we will be doing that as well. And we'll be conducting meetings to getting input on the strategic plan. We did it last time during COVID in 2020. It'll be interesting. We've come a long way since 2020. So it's a good time to take a moment and update that plan and see where we want to go in the next four years and beyond that. Let's see. Right now we are moving forward on some since the session's not over, but for me, I don't need to be down there this week. So I'm focusing now on getting some outreach activities moving forward and some education initiatives that we want to do for 2024, which I'll have more information to report on that at our next meeting. I think that's everything, Tom.
Well, that's a lot, so that's good. I know we plan at the next meeting, we wanted to talk about an update kind of on the update for the strategic plan and how that progresses. But one of the things April and I talked about last week that this authority we do need to do today is so that by legislation, the strategic plan authority actually resides with us. But 4 years ago, we actually voted to empower the VNEC board to prepare the strategic plan and bring it back to the authority for approval, which I think worked pretty well. And I think we should, we need to do that again this time to actually empower VNEC to do the update and then bring back to the board for approval. So what I would like is a motion from one of our authority members that basically to that effect, right? That empowers VNEC to conduct the update for the strategic plan and provide regular updates to the authority and final approval later this fall. So if that works for everyone, do we have a motion?
Motion for me.
Andrew Hutton has a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
A second.
Okay, I saw Mary's hand go up, so I'm going to say Mary Newmeyer second. And then because we are virtual, Ryan, can you call the roll? We'll need a formal yes or no from the authority members that we can record.
Yes, give me 1 second while I make sure I have the language right for the actual motion. Empower VNEC to conduct the update of the strategic plan and provide regular updates. And what the last part was, and report out for final approval.
Yes, correct.
Okie dokie. All right, so Calvin Lowe,
Yes.
John Capps,
Yes.
Glenn Davis,
Yes.
Tom, we'll come back to you, right?
Yep.
Eugene Gachek,
Gene, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry. But yes, I vote yes.
Andrew Hutton,
Yes.
Scott Koppel,
Yes.
Mary Newmeyer,
Yes.
Tim Stuhler,
Yes.
Brian Bella,
Yes.
and Tom for.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, great.
unanimous
So
vote.
April, we'll look forward to kind of having a little bit more of a discussion at our next meeting. So then,
One other thing, Tom, real quick, I wanted to mention is if y'all haven't seen it, the Department of Energy did a really good social media campaign using North Anna talking about spent fuel. It was very helpful to have some of the pictures they posted talking about how much spent fuel has been stored over the last 45 years. Katie did a couple of videos I thought were very helpful. So just wanted to note that as well.
That was
Good
federal
point.
DOE, to clarify.
yes, it's a U.S. Department of Energy. Assistant Secretary Katie Huff visited North Anna, and she's touching the spent fuel casts, and she's perfectly fine. So it was a good campaign. Anyway.
You know where we can access?
So then,
I can
yes, it's
send that
on.
around.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Ryan, that'd be great. But it's on DOE's Office of Nuclear webpage. It's right there on the front, and it's been on their social media and all that. So that's good.
Tom, where can we get where can I get a copy of these?
Yeah, actually, Ryan, that's good. Thank you, Kelvin. That's a good point. Ryan, maybe after this meeting, if you could send around the link to the strategic plan, which is on the VNECA website, but it'd be good just to have a link so everyone and those new members can take a look at that. So that was something that was legislated about 5 years ago, April, is that correct? And in 2020, VNEC created that strategic plan. It's actually been a really great roadmap for a lot of the work that's happened since then. So it'll be good to be able to update it. And the legislation calls for it to be updated every 4 years.
Will do.
Okay. So the next thing is we need to approve the minutes from the last meeting. That was attached to the meeting notice. Does anybody have any changes or comments on the minutes that we need to amend before we take a vote? I did not see anything that was incorrect. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion, Tom.
Okay, that's Scott Koppel. Do I have a second?
Second.
That's John Capps. All right, Brian, I think we need to go through the roll call once again.
Yep, that is perfectly fine. All right. Calvin Lowe,
Yes.
John Capps,
Yes.
Glenn Davis, Gene Grachek,
Yes.
Andrew Hutton,
Yes.
Scott Koppel,
Yes.
Mary Newmeyer,
Yes.
Tim Stuhler,
Yes.
Brian Vella,
Yes.
Tom DePonte.
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Great. So that kind of concludes the formal business. So for our new members, usually what we also leave some time for is any updates from the members specific to their organization. We also, if there's any key nuclear news, which I have just one thing, but allow some time for comments from the authority. One thing we try to do best practice within Framatome is anytime there's a new hire or someone new in your group, you're encouraged to ask when you have regular meetings if they have comments or suggestions. I won't put Calvin, Mary, and Brian on the spot today, but I would welcome if you have comments or suggestions on the way the meetings are run or other aspects, to please don't hesitate to send them directly to me. You can also always talk to Ryan as well, who's our great staff person on the authority. But we're always looking to try to improve the meetings. And one thing I know I will enlist your help on, Calvin, I already have an idea for you, but is we like to have, as we had Lucas today, we do like to have guest speakers join us and try to help broaden our understanding of what's going on in the industry and in academia. So if you have suggestions for guest speakers for future meetings, I am all ears. Always love to hear them. But yes, please provide us comments on how we can make things better, more efficient, and more helpful for you as we go forward. So in terms of news, I thought I would highlight, I think a lot of us that track these things regularly, Scott and Mary and others here in DC, we look like we finally have a fiscal year 2024 DOE budget. I'm not going to speak to DOD, Scott, that's more yours and is in the second round of bills, which may be a little bit more challenging, but we do look like we have a full year budget for the Department of Energy. The encouraging thing is it continues very strong support for nuclear energy programs and the Office of Science, which includes a lot of the fusion programs and the implementation for the CHIPS Act. So that's a great thing, and I think continues to show strong bipartisan consensus around support for nuclear. And that's on the heels last week of a overwhelming bipartisan vote in the House for the AEAA. I can't remember exactly the full name of the bill, but it's an NRC reform.
It's the Atomic Energy Advancement Act or something like that.
You got it, Mary. You nailed it.
That's right. I think of it as the Senate version of the Advance Act, but yes, thank you. But it does a lot for NRC reform around advanced reactor licensing. It also extends the Price-Anderson deadline or insurance, which is great for the operating fleet. So it will have to go into conference with the Senate, but again, it's been broadly supported both in the Senate and the House, and I think their conference had already started before the legislation passed. So that's a good thing. Are there any other updates, member updates, or other pieces of news people would like to share? Andrew?
I was just going to say the official name is the Atomic Energy Advancement Act, HR 6444.
Great, thank you, Mary. Andrew, you had an update?
Yeah, actually, I have two. So first of all, I'm chairing a conference on the 17th for 4 days on accelerator applications. We have about a dozen tracks which include high power accelerator components, materials for material science, environment, medical, industry, cultural, compact. So that's actually quite a big deal. We have a couple of hundred people from all around the world. Possibly of more interest to the group is that Jefferson Lab has always been a single activity lab based on nuclear physics with an accelerator. About a month ago, we were awarded a massive high power computing facility, which will be sited at the lab for basically applications, not only for us, but also as a user facility, which people will be able to address. We profited from about a 50 million grant from the Commonwealth to actually make that happen. And they're building us a building where that computing facility will go. So that's something which hopefully when it's up and running, there would be people from VNEC and VNECA who will be able to access that.
That's great, Andrew. That might be useful for having someone that will be maybe managing that program come present the authority at some point.
She would love to do it and do it a heck of a lot better than I would.
Perfect. Thank you. Other updates?
Guys, I'd like to say at the end of May, we are sort of hosting a fusion workforce conference that's funded by the National Science Foundation. It's going to look at the need for expanding the fusion workforce. Right now, with all the private sector investment, there's a big talent drain away from universities, away from into industries. This is kind of like Google in the early days right now in the industry. So this conference will be May 28th and 29th and 30th here in Hampton, in downtown. So you'll be hearing more about that. And if you guys are interested in attending, let us know.
Great.
Yeah, I would be very interested in some more information on that. And I also would like to see if make some connections for you. So if we could touch base at some point, that'd be great.
Gavin, this is Tim Steller. I was also going to ask, is that really a Virginia-centric audience, or is it bigger than that?
It's bigger. We're actually doing it in collaboration with Columbia University and UCLA. But in these kind of conferences, it itself is looking for kind of a report to help figure out what direction they should head in terms of supporting the whole fusion workforce efforts.
Thank you.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, well, now we have the portion of, Ryan, go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and send out what I assume will be our May meeting invite, or I'm going to send the doodle poll out for May. I'm thinking August, and then late September, early October will be the next 3 meeting months, unless anyone has any large argument to those suggested times.
No, can I ask just a clarifying question? This is virtual, and maybe just to be reminded for all of us, me included, we can only do so many virtuals, correct?
We have 2. So the way the code is written is we can have 2 or 25% of our meetings, whichever is more.
Okay.
As an entity that meets 4, maybe 5 times, 2 is going to be the most we can use. And so my plan was, like last year, this meeting will be virtual. The next 3 will be in person and in Richmond. And then the last meeting, which could happen in November and would happen potentially virtually, would be held in reserve in case there was an emergency with the annual report.
Got it. Thank you. Very helpful.
And I think that saves everyone from having to scramble down to Richmond in case we need to vote on something.
Cool.
Or up to Richmond, rather, JLabs.
down for me, but thank
Yeah.
you.
And then also there are I will send out, there are some stipulations that allow people to attend virtually. Like if you live more than 60 miles away from where the meeting location will happen, if you have medical emergencies or family to attend to. So I will go ahead and send that around too to familiarize everyone with.
Yep, and we've got a process in place to allow for voting in that instance as well, which we have used in the past.
Yeah.
So that's great. And I would say, you know, Calvin, Brian, and Mary, if you have questions on that front, Ryan can help. And then we also have folks that can support from the Attorney General's office that provide some of that training as needed. We got all of it kind of post-COVID, I guess it was, right, Brandy, back when we were able to modify some of that. So, but that is still available for new members as well. Okay. So we reserve time at the end for public comment. If there's anybody from the public that has joined us that has a comment, could you hit the raise hand button so I can call on you? Okay, I don't see any.
Yep.
So unless there are any other questions or comments from the authority, we can wrap up, give you a little bit of time left. But thank you, Calvin, Brian, and Mary for joining us today. Welcome to the authority. We appreciate your input, and we'll see everybody in Richmond probably in a couple months. All right. Thank you all. Have a good one.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.